Yo, I got a 2004 Dodge Dakota in here. The Durangos are the same thing. This guy came in, he said his heat wasn't working until he got going, and then when the coolant circulates, he get heat back in the cabin of the car truck thing. I pressure tested it yesterday and found that it's got a bad radiator. I put some pressure in it. Yesterday I wasn't making all that racket. Hear that? I pressure tested it again this morning just to make sure nothing else was goofy on this. And as you can see, I just took some soapy water and just hosed this down. I can see bubbles coming out of the radiator when I pressure tested. It was a little wet on the top there. So he definitely needs a radiator. And all that gurgling wasn't even making any noise. It's got a bad water pump. If I look down on the harmonic balancer, I can see a little coolant. And I can hear it dripping. If I filled it up with coolant, it'd drip a lot more. It's just so low though. I got a drain pan down here and it's dripping. This damn truck tried to trick me. I already bought a radiator. I was just going to slap it in this morning. I figured I better pressure test it again because these water pumps do that. Sometimes they seal and then sometimes they don't. I wiggled the fan too. The bearing's nice and tight, so I don't know. We'll see what's going on with this. I got to take all this apart. First thing I'm going to do on the front of this truck, there's a drain right there. I can use a 22 millimeter socket on it, but I think I can just get in there and unscrew this thing. Coolant's probably going to go flying all over the place. Make a big huge mess because it's got no place to go. Jesus, man. But yeah, there it is. I'm going to drain all this out. I'm going to start by getting this reservoir off. Couple connections I can unplug here. One for the washer. I think this is a level sensor for the washer fluid. Push in the tabs. Then I got a hose here for the washer. And a lot of times these start pouring coolant out of them. I got a little cap from a brake bleeder. I'm just going to pop this off and put that on there. That way it doesn't leak. There's a 10 millimeter right here I can get with a swivel socket and an extension. And then on this side, I got to get this off. This is for the overflow. Got a radiator clamp here. I might as well take this whole hose off just because it's easy enough to do. Get a little hook tool action after this thing. And I have another 10 millimeter right here. There's some little tabs that are just kind of holding this in a little bit. Give it some wiggles and some jiggles and some bojangles. And this thing comes right out. There's a couple ways you can get this fan off. Some people just use a chisel and a hammer and just beat on it. Just beat on one of the edges. Air chisel. You can use a MacGyver wrench and a hammer. I got this fancy tool here though. It's an air hammer attachment. I think this is counterclockwise threads. Yup. They come off real easy usually. You don't need to be that tight because the rotation of the fan keeps it tight. You always want to store them upright too because there's a seal in here, and sometimes when you put them this way, they leak fluid out of here. 15 millimeter on this serpentine belt. Might have missed this shot. Put a 15 millimeter on this tensioner. 13 millimeter on this tensioner. All the rest of these are 13 millimeter. Little pry bar action, and this should pop right off. Make sure it goes in my drain pan, because it will leak. Now to get this radiator out, I got to get this lower fan shroud off. There's a connector for the fan down on the bottom. And there's little plastic push clips on it. There's 2 holes right here you can see. I just pulled that out of the way. I think there's just a couple of 10 millimeters holding this thing in. There's one way down the bottom over here underneath the transmission cooler line. Same thing, I'm using a swivel socket and an extension. Kind of a tight squeeze, but it should come out. I can get this electric fan off. This thing's got one of them child-proof connectors on it. You need to get a pick in here, and you push this little tab to one side, and then you can push it through to unlock this tab. Then you just push it in and pop it out. Then I have 3 10 millimeters to get this out. This bar is kind of in my way. I got 2 13 millimeters here. And there's 2 more down here, but I'm not going to get at them. I'm just going to bend this thing out of the way. Then I should be able to get at this last fan bolt. It's not coming out. I have a screw right here that's just spinning, so I'm going to break this off. Since I don't need to save this radiator, I'm just going to get in here with a hammer and I'm going to break this tab off of the radiator. Take the fan out. Now I can, I don't know, get that off somehow. I got you. Well, I have a little rubber thing I can take off here. 10 millimeter for the hood release. You always want to put this on the same exact way you took it off. When they get old and crusty like this, they leave their own mark pretty well. Couple 10 millimeters here for the radiator. Got a bunch of 13 millimeters for this core support. It looks like 6 of them. I'm going to carefully lift this out of here and try not to damage the fender. Get this cable off of here. Hopefully it won't break. It probably will. And it did. Because it's amazing. There's 2 bolts down here that hold this condenser onto the radiator. This one over here is already missing, so this radiator's probably been replaced before. Aftermarket bolt. Oh, I should be able to just lift this piece of crust up and unhook it from the radiator. It can just stay just like that. And get this upper radiator hose clamp off. And these transmission lines last, they're a 16 millimeter or a 5/8. Ooh, I found a bolt. Ooh, lucky. This should drip tranny fluid all over the place. I don't know how much. There should be an O-ring on here too. I don't see it. It must be stuck in the radiator. So you want to make sure there's an O-ring on this when you put it back in. Yeah, the O-ring fell out right here. I might put some new ones on there. I probably will. I should be able to just take this out. It looks like this upper transmission line was bolted down to something at one time or another. Somebody probably just broke that tab right off, so I didn't have to deal with it. Now that I got the radiator out, I'm going to deal with this water pump. I got a brake bleeder. I'm going to use that just to suck a bunch of coolant out of here. That way the coolant level is below the water pump so I don't get any contaminants on my gasket. I just got a regular razor blade. I'm gonna clean this surface really good. It's really crusty. I got a different scraper I'm gonna try to use on it too. Seems to work a little better. Then I'll put a little brake cleaner on a rag. I'll just wipe this surface down. It's a little bit pitted. It's corroded and pitted just a little bit, so I'm gonna end up putting a little bit of sealant on this thing. I'll just go over it like 3 different times with a clean rag.
Hello.
Yo!
What's up, man?
The price of weed.
Nah, you know, it's not too bad.
Well, I wouldn't know, but you would.
Yeah, I would.
This seal only goes on one way, of course. A lot of people just put silicone paste on here and slap the thing on. The timing cover side of this is pretty corroded, so I'm going to put a little bit of ultra grade Permatex on here. Don't need a lot, just enough to fill up the little crevices and cracks and the imperfections in the corroded timing cover. The 3 long bolts for the water pump too, it looked like it might have had sealant on it, so I just put some PTFE thread sealant on the threads. I suppose I'll put the 3 long bolts on first. If you want to torque these down, I think the torque spec on these is like 43 foot-pounds. I don't know what the torque is for this. If I was a guess, I'd say it's 24 foot-pounds. I'm just going to put it on by hand. The belt routing's on the core support here. Put my belt on it because I can. Took a good look at this. It looks like the only thing that this radiator's missing are these rubber grommets that go in these pegs. It looks like everything else I need is on here. The radiator didn't come with any O-rings, but I found a couple that should work. Alright, now I guess I'm just going to stick this bugger in here. Make sure the radiator falls in the little pegs. Pegs in the holes. Uh-oh. I forgot I got to put this fan in first because this plug's got to go under this shroud. Hopefully I can just take this one bolt out in this corner over here. Like I said before, this doesn't need to be very tight. It always tightens up on its own. Give it a couple wraps. One of my first YouTube videos that I did was on this truck. It got into a little fender bender. So this thing isn't quite lining up the way it should. Got to use a little alignment punch on here. Got to get these started. This goes underneath. Oh, shoot. Oh, what do I do? All right, this is all good. I'm just going to pressure test it, fill it up with coolant, make sure the system's burped, and call it a job. Okay, bye.